For our next movement, we're going to talk about the dumbbell row. The dumbbell row is a movement that has a lot of similarity to our bench press and our pull-up and our overhead press as far as our scap setting goes. A lot of this is kind of universal as far as movement goes. So for our dumbbell row, the first thing we want to start with is our foot placement. Now there's two ways I'll actually have athletes do it. One's going to emphasize more of an athletic position. One's going to focus more on setting the hips so our lat won't go through a different range of motion. So for instance, most of the time when I'm going to have an athlete row, I'm going to have my right hand and my left leg be the furthest things away from me. So I'll have essentially opposite leg, opposite arm. It's like a sprint stance, right? If I'm in a sprint stance, that's the same thing I'm doing here, but now I have support, okay? So I'm gonna go here, just like that. This is the position I have most athletes go to. Now sometimes I'll have them go like this, same side. What that's doing is that's setting that hip, so that way when I squeeze my lat, my hip is not gonna move compared to here where it's not as set. So I force myself to use my lat a little more compared to here in this athletic stance. I can still get good tension to the athletic stance, but the stance with my same arm and leg forward, it just kind of challenges it in a different way. Both are good. I give it up to the coach to progress it or use it as they choose to. Okay? So our foot placement can kind of change. It's just up to what you're trying to focus, and you can answer why for each one. I'll use them both universal. Our next thing is our torso angle. So as you just saw there, I'm very low. I'm not gonna be up here with my rows. I'm gonna try and get nice and low and be right about, I would say almost parallel. I would say maybe I'm at like 10 to 15 degrees. I'm not exactly, this is probably about 90 degrees or 0 degrees here, about 10 to 15, okay? When you're doing some other type of rows, like chest supported rows, those can be a little higher, up to 45 degrees. It's going to change depending on what is programmed. A coach can choose to put a bench up to the first notch, which is gonna be, maybe about I don't know, I'd say a 40 degree, 45 degree row. It can come up a little more. It can kind of change, and it's gonna have different emphases on your scap setting, your lat tension, your bicep working. It's gonna emphasize different muscles a little more with each way you go. Same thing for like an incline bench. It's gonna change as you go from here to here, right? So I really like to focus on getting as close to parallel, maybe going up to about 15 degrees for that row pattern. Our next thing, we start with a scap set. So we don't go right to doing a full row. What we do is we get our feet set, we get our torso set, then what I'm gonna do is pull my scap in. Very similar to what we do with bench. We set our scap first, and then we do our movement. So it's a 4-part movement to make sure we're getting our rhomboids and mid traps to really be working and still practicing that scap setting. Want to stay nice and controlled as we're doing this movement. That way we don't have compensation and we're not just using momentum. I could probably grab the 150-pound kettlebell and get a little something up, right? But am I really working the muscle? Probably not. If I'm really nice and strict and smooth with it, I'm probably gonna have to use lesser weight. I'm a decently strong guy, but I don't think I can move a 150-pound kettlebell or dumbbell very easily. With the right technique and really trying to target the muscles in the correct way, I'm gonna have a really, really hard time. When it comes to staying strict, I'm most likely gonna probably stop around the 100-pound range because I'm gonna lose positioning, or I'm gonna have to start using momentum, or I'm gonna have to rotate my torso, okay? But last thing I wanna talk about is that torso rotation you'll see a lot of the time. You'll see athletes, one, using momentum, and two, they're gonna rotate their torso to try and make that easier to get that, because all they're fixated on is getting the dumbbell or the implement up to their shoulder and back down. They don't care about the activation of the muscle and really feeling the tension. They just care about get it up, get it up, get it up. Okay? So really emphasize nice, smooth, and controlled. Row up, row down. I'm not trying to go here. I'm not trying to open up. I'm gonna stay nice and level with my shoulders, level through my hips. I'm gonna row back and down. Okay? A dumbbell row is another way to practice our scap setting, because scap setting is so important when it comes to strengthening other movements, because it's going to control our shoulder a lot. There's a lot of muscles attached to our scapula and up here in our shoulder that work together in unison, and if they're not stable and they're very free flow, you might not get the right tension that you're seeking. That's why we always want to set our scap correctly so we get that right tension. Okay? I like to think of a dumbbell row, especially a single arm dumbbell row like this. It can be a core exercise. You can get anti-rotation because you're trying not to rotate. You're feeling tension through this oblique over here as you're rowing. And also, I mean, it can be a bit of a low back exercise if you have the same leg here, right? Let's say I'm doing it with the same leg, same arm, like this, and I'm not using a support. I'm actually going to get a little bit of a low back engagement because I'm trying to stabilize. So you can still challenge your core in this movement just like other movements, and it's something that should be talked about when it comes to you as a coach, because core engagement and stabilization of our thoracic and lumbar spine is really important for sport, and it's going to stop movement in unnecessary ways that we don't want.